together. So, Chrissy, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do. Everyone gets so much value out of it. The sessions that you provide are also unique. So, truly, I'm saying this, I think, for everyone. Thanks, and we're looking forward to next year as well. And thanks, of course, for having me on so much. It really does mean a lot.
Well, you're a part of us, Luke, so thank you.
Well, thank you. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Um, well, as Christy had mentioned, I've got a little bit of a unique session today, a little different than what I usually talk about. Um, and we're going to be diving into something a little deeper. And I hope this is what everyone expected. And it's really about how mastering your inner world, your thoughts, your emotions, and focus can help to create not just peace in life, but clarity and confidence in your financial decisions and your planning as well. And for those that don't know me well, and I know there's people on the call today who do know me well, Tina, I'm looking at you, but I'm a big believer in the power of the mind. And over the years, I've really spent a lot of time studying, testing, and applying some ideas around mindset, behavior, and decision making, many of which are backed by science, and then bringing them into my professional world of financial planning. So today, what we're going to do is explore how these concepts really connect. And by the end, my goal is that everyone here walks away with just a few new ideas, frameworks, or maybe some tools that can help you navigate both life's chaos and your financial world with greater calm and greater control. But before we dive into it, as always, I like to give a quick introduction for those that don't know me or my firm. And thank you, of course, for being here. I know topics like mindset and financial behavior aren't always thought of as essential, but in my experience, it's what can really separate good decision making from great decision making. So a little bit about us. We're Continuum Consulting Group, a financial planning and wealth management firm in Irvine, but we do work with clients all across the nation. And our process really starts by understanding each client's full picture, goals, their family, their lifestyle, priorities, and then building a financial plan that aligns with all of that. From there, we manage investments intentionally around that person's or that family's plan, making sure that all decisions support the bigger picture. And because planning doesn't happen in a vacuum, we also collaborate with other professionals like CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, people like that. But ultimately, our goal is simple: to help clients navigate change, make confident decisions, and prepare intentionally for whatever the future holds. And here's a quick overview of our team. We've got a great group of planners, myself included, a retirement plan specialist, an investment specialist, and then a phenomenal admin team that really keeps everything running smoothly on our end. Everyone on our team brings a unique skill set and perspective to the table. Some of you may know Katarina from the boot camp. And really, what makes us different is how collaborative we are. We don't operate in silos. We work to make sure every client gets the best, most thoughtful advice possible, and it's tailored to their needs. I'm just going to skip right over this and let's get into the conversation today. There we go. So, as I mentioned earlier, most financial planning discussions, they really revolve around numbers, rates of return, for example, tax efficiency, withdrawal strategies, and so on and so forth. And those things do matter, but they really don't tell the whole story. So real peace doesn't just come from spreadsheets. It comes from your mindset and your ability to manage through emotions and perspective when things feel a little uncertain. Now, over the years, I've met people, and this is a true story, but I've met people with more money than they could ever imagine. People who are financially secure by every definition possible, yet they live with constant anxiety and fear, a lot of that fear stemming from financials. They're always waiting for the next market drop. They're always waiting for the next big problem. or the next time something's going to go wrong. And on the other hand, I've met people who have a fraction of that wealth. Some people that don't even have two pennies to rub together, but they live with calm, contentment, and a greater sense of confidence. Their, I call it return on life, far exceeds their balance sheet. And the difference isn't the money, it's the mindset. And that's why I believe true financial planning isn't just about optimizing your wealth, it's about aligning your mind with your money. And when those two work together, that's when fulfillment starts to show up. And that's the kind of peace that lasts even when the markets don't cooperate. So today's conversation is really about this intersection, how we merge mindset and money to create that lasting fulfillment. And to frame that, I want to share a quote from Jim Murphy. He's the author of Inner Excellence. It's one of my favorite books over mindset. And he says, the greatest freedom you have is where you place your thoughts. Let me let that sink in for a second. The greatest freedom you have is where you place your thoughts. That's the essence of what we're going to explore today. Learning to direct our thoughts so that they serve us, they don't control us. So to start, let's look at something called the inside out principle. And the idea is that our outer world is simply just a reflection of our inner world. Your performance, whether it's in your career, your relationships, or finances, it flows directly from your mindset. And when your mind is cluttered or reactive, we tend to make emotional decisions. We'll feel out of control. And that lack of clarity creates that internal and external stress. But when the mind is calmed and focused, we can make decisions from a place of intention, not emotion. And that's where clarity and peace start to really show up. And this is not just a philosophy. Research has shown that people with higher emotional control tend to experience greater life satisfaction, and they also tend to make better financial decisions. And then take a look at this chart on the right. It's simple but powerful. But your mind drive your actions, and your actions ultimately drive your results. So let me give you two real world examples, kind of real world examples in my line of work here. So imagine someone who consistently worries about the markets. It's always in the back of their head. We all know someone like this. They check their portfolio every day. They maybe see red in down markets, and then they panic. That anxiety in their mind, it leads them to sell at the wrong time. Maybe they sit on that cash for far too long, and then they only jump in after things have recovered. And essentially, they repeat that cycle over and over. That's their actions. Their thoughts, the fear, the lack of control, that drives the poor actions, which ultimately creates poor results. Now, the opposite, and we know someone like this as well, and hopefully most people on the call are like this, they have the exact same portfolio. We deal with the same market environment as that not so savvy investor I just talked about, but this person has a different mindset. They understand volatility is normal. Instead of reacting, they trust the process, they stay disciplined, and they maybe even see the downturn as an opportunity to buy. That calm drives patience, strategic actions, and those actions ultimately lead to better results and a greater peace of mind. Now, both people have the exact same information, but the one that manages their inner world gets a completely different outcome in their outer world. Simple but powerful. And to think clearly, especially when it comes to financial decisions, it's important to recognize what's actually within our control and what's not. And at the end of the day, anxiety, and we all experience it, it's really just the uncertainty about the future, the things that we can't control. And while I'm no psychiatrist, what I've learned from both research and experience is that most of our anxiety stems from trying to control things that are quite simply uncontrollable. Whether it's your health, money, relationships, our mind tends to drift towards the unknown, the what ifs, and that's where worry starts to grow. So take a look at this illustration. In the center, you'll see the things, financially speaking, that we can control. Things like how our portfolio is structured, how much we save, our behavior, our reaction to events, and even what kind of media we consume. If you sit in front of the TV watching Fox News for 8 hours a day, you're going to have a lot of doom or gloom in your mind. Those things are all within our control, okay? But then the surrounding, that's the areas that are out of our control. Markets, inflation, the Fed, interest rates, elections, volatility, and so on. There are external forces or these are external forces that you can prepare for, but you cannot predict them. And the key, going back to that inside out principle, is that when your mind is clear about what's in our control, you can then release the rest. And your actions become calmer, more deliberate, and more effective. You stop reacting to every headline or every market swing. And that shift in mindset leads to better financial outcomes and in a lot more peace. Now, I know everything I've talked about sounds nice and dandy in theory, but in practice, it's not always that easy. So I want to give you a framework that helps bring all this to life. It's something I call the 3 Ps to inner excellence: purpose, presence, and process. So these 3 pillars are what allow us to live, act, and make decisions from the inside out, especially when things get stressful or uncertain, which they always will. That's a guarantee. And when you have a clear sense of purpose, you know why you're doing what you're doing. That's why in any planning arrangement, we always ask, what are your goals? What are your objectives? And then when you live with presence, you're grounded in the moment instead of getting pulled into fear or distraction. And then when you follow a disciplined process, you can trust your plan financially and emotionally, even when things don't go perfectly. So over the next few slides here, I'm going to unpack each of these in a little more detail. And I want to show you how when you kind of put these things together, they create powerful alignment between your mindset, your money, and ultimately your long-term results. So let's start with the first: process. In process, it's all about knowing who you are and why you're here. Or I'm sorry, purpose. It's all about knowing who you are and why you're here. And that's why we begin any financial planning conversation, like I mentioned, with questions around your goals, your vision, what truly matters most to you. Because financial planning isn't just about hitting a rate of return or growing an account. It's about using your limited resources that you have to live a meaningful life. And especially in retirement, when you move from we call it the accumulation phase, when you're saving, into the distribution phase where you're spending, clarity around purpose becomes even more important. So let's go through a few key points here. First off, purpose brings clarity and peace, while ego brings comparison and fear. A good example of this, imagine two people who each buy a new car. One buys it because it fits their lifestyle and it fits their values. It's a reliable, efficient, and helps them enjoy their life. The other buys a car to impress others or to keep up with the Joneses. Same purchase, but two different emotional outcomes. One feels contentment, the other feels pressure. That is the difference between acting with purpose versus acting from your ego. Second, re-anchor your life and money decisions to your values and meaning. So your financial plan should reflect what's important to you. I know I've mentioned this a few times now, but it should not reflect what society tells you to value. Maybe that's time with your family, flexibility to travel, or supporting a cause that might be important to you. Third, true fulfillment comes from thinking beyond ourselves. And that doesn't always mean giving all of our money away, being charitable, for example. It means using your resources, time, energy, and money in ways that extend joy, love, or opportunity to others, or just opportunity to yourself, putting yourself in a situation that helps you get to where you want to be. Fourth, legacy is about people and impact. It's not just about assets. Very, very often clients tell me they want to leave a legacy to their kids. They want to leave money to their kids. And I always ask, what does that really mean to you? Because legacy isn't just dollars. It's values, lessons, and experiences that you pass down. And it's a way for people to remember how you lived, not just what you left behind. And then lastly, align your giving time and spending with your values. Your calendar and your bank statement should both reflect your priorities. When they do this, your life starts to feel congruent. There's less cognitive dissonance, and that's when alignment creates real peace. So before any financial planning begins, take time to reflect on your purpose, because when you start there, every other decision, financial or otherwise, it kind of falls naturally into place. And I want to pause for a moment before going into the next pillar and talk more about the ego, because this is often the hidden force behind poor decision making, not just financially, but in life in general. And it's important to understand that the ego, it craves recognition, control, and short-term wins. It's that voice in all of our head that says, I need to prove myself, or I need to have more than someone. And the ego, it's reactive and short-sighted. It wants comfort and validation now. Purpose, on the other hand, it looks at the bigger picture. It seeks service, connection, and authenticity, both within yourself and the people around you. And the ego will generally ask, how do I compare? While purpose will ask, well, what really matters? What impact can I make? So when you think about your own financial life, I want you to picture these two images. We have a bag of money. That's the traditional symbol of wealth. That's what the ego sees. It just sees numbers, rankings, and status. And there's really no end to it. Once you're a millionaire, you want to have $2 million. Once you have $2 million, you want to have $10 million. It never ends. But on the right, we have the heart. And that's what purpose sees. It sees money as an extension of your values, a tool that allows you to live meaningfully and contribute to something greater than just yourself. Because when money decisions are driven by the ego, stress will typically follow. There's always something to chase, like I mentioned. There's always something to prove. But when decisions are guided by purpose, peace follows. There's clarity, most importantly, direction, and then ultimately fulfillment. So now that we've covered purpose and understand a little bit more about how the ego works, I want to move on to pillar two, which is presence. And presence is all about mastering your thoughts, emotions, and focus. And in my opinion, this is actually the hardest to practice consistently. It takes time, it takes self-awareness, and a lot of patience. But if you stick with it, it's one of the most powerful strengths you'll ever develop. So let's start with this idea. Your experience of life equals your state of mind. I want you to think about two people leaving their office at the end of a long day. Maybe they work at the same company. It immediately starts to rain. The first person, they frown. They think, of course, this would happen to me. My day is already terrible. I'm tired. They get frustrated. They drive home miserable. And the rain, it becomes proof that their day was bad. The second person, on the other hand, they smile. They take a deep breath. Maybe they even think, rain brings life. I'm in California. It's a drought. We need rain. Maybe this is a moment to slow down and be a little grateful. Same rain, two completely different experiences. And Bob Marley said in one of my favorite quotes, some people dance in the rain, others just get wet. That's presence. The understanding that our outer world is simply shaped by our inner world. Next, feelings come from thoughts, not events. So if you think about it, events are actually neutral. It's our thoughts about them that create the emotion. For example, when the market drops, maybe one person panics while another person sees opportunity. It's the same event. The difference, though, is in their thought. Next, peace begins when awareness replaces autopilot. Now, for most people, they go through their day reacting. They react to the news. They react to traffic, to the markets. Presence is the opposite of that. It's catching yourself in thought rather than being run by your thoughts. And our thoughts often come from deep fears or desires. And a lot of times they're driven by the ego. And when we're aware of that, we can choose a different response before our emotions snowball. For instance, imagine you're driving, someone cuts you off, and you get angry. Just a couple minutes later, someone brakes too hard in front of you, and you get even angrier. Then maybe a pedestrian crosses the street slowly, and now you're ready to explode for what seems like no reason at all. That's called the snowball effect. But with awareness, you can stop that before it builds. Maybe the driver who cut you off simply didn't see you. It was an accident. Maybe the person braking was trying to avoid debris on the road, which ultimately would have hurt your car. And maybe the pedestrian's just taking their time because they have a bad knee and they can't walk quicker. That's called reframing. And it's a key aspect to awareness. And really, awareness, it's going to give you that space between the event and your reaction, allowing you to reframe the situation to a more positive light. And the more space you allow yourself, the better off you're going to be from an awareness standpoint. And then finally, self-awareness means noticing thoughts without judgments. That's the essence of mindfulness. When a thought arises, you don't need to label it as good or bad. You just notice it. You recognize it. And as my yogi friends would say, you breathe through it and you let it pass. And presence, it's not about perfection. It's about practice. That's the key word here. It's learning to slow down the automatic reactions. And the key word is automatic. That's how we all live. That's how we naturally are as humans. And you want to slow down those reactions so you can respond from clarity, not just emotion. And over time, it becomes, in my opinion, if you do this right, one of the most powerful tools for both your life and also your financial decisions. So we've talked about how presence is really about mastering your thoughts, emotions, and focus. But the natural question is, how do you actually practice this? Well, it really starts with understanding your beliefs, because your beliefs are just those repeated thoughts. And when you learn to control those thoughts, especially the ones that you repeat most often, you can start to shift your entire mindset from the negative to the positive. So let's kind of go through this step by step here, because this is where I think people will get a lot of value. Now, first off, beliefs are thoughts plus emotions repeated over time. Here's an example. Imagine someone who has spent years telling themselves, I'm terrible with money. Every time they overspend or see a dip in the market, that thought gets reinforced with emotion, frustration, guilt, maybe anxiety. And over time, that combination of thought and emotion, it starts to harden into a belief. But the same process works in reverse. If that person begins saying, I'm learning to make better financial decisions, and repeats it while taking small positive actions, they begin to change that belief. And that repetition is what ultimately reprograms the mind. That's called neuroplasticity. I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes here. Second, you can change your belief by constantly changing your state of focus. So if your focus is on what's wrong or out of your control, on the outside of that chart that I showed earlier, or illustration I showed earlier, your emotional state follows, and it typically will spiral downward. But when you redirect focus to what you can control, like I mentioned earlier, savings rates, asset allocation, your behavior, your emotional state begins to stabilize. The more you do this, the more your beliefs start to shift towards confidence instead of fear. Third, notice negative patterns immediately. In Jim Murphy's book, I mentioned it earlier, Inner Excellence, he suggested a simple technique. I used to do this. Wear a rubber band on your wrist, and every time you catch yourself in a negative thought, just give it a gentle snap. Now, it's not about punishment. It's about awareness. We're not Pavlov's dogs trying to classically condition ourselves. It just keeps that mind awareness to the point of, oh, I had a negative thought. Let's not do that again, or let's minimize those. And really, the moment you notice a negative thought, you've already started to take back control of your mind. And another option, and this is what I do right now, and I learned this from Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, great book, by the way, wear a bracelet. Every time you think or act negatively, you have to take it off, move it to the other wrist. And what this does is it helps you stay present and conscious of your negative thoughts. And you don't really enjoy moving a bracelet left and right. So eventually, well, hopefully, your negative thoughts will start to diminish and you won't have them as much. Fourth, replace the negative thoughts with what's true and what's possible. For example, if your mind is saying the markets are crashing, I'm going to lose everything, replace that with markets move in cycles. My plan is built for this. I've seen this before and I can stay disciplined. That shift grounds you in truth, not fear, and in what's possible, not catastrophic. The same thing for a family member. Maybe someone seems to be cold and they're acting negatively to you. Don't say, well, Jim hates me. I shouldn't give him a call. I shouldn't text him. Say, maybe something's going on in Jim's world. Maybe I should give Jim some space and then reach out to him later in the week to see how everything's going. And then finally, over time, this process that we've been talking about, it's going to rewire your emotional baseline. That's the power of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt at any age. And for years, actually, scientists believed our mental patterns were sort of fixed after a certain age. I think it was age 25, but research now shows the opposite. Your brain is constantly remodeling itself based on what you repeatedly think and feel. So just like practicing an instrument strengthens certain muscles in your hands, practicing awareness, positive thinking, it's going to strengthen the neural pathways that create that calm focus and confidence. And after time and after practice, positive thinking and awareness will come more naturally to everyone. And presence at its core, it's not about ignoring negative thoughts. It's just about noticing them, reframing them, giving yourself space to think about them, and then training your mind to default more towards peace rather than fear. So to wrap up pillar 2 here, it really comes down to understanding what's in our control and then letting go of what's not. And when we're intentional about where we place our thoughts, the thoughts start to shift. And that shift, it's going to create the clarity, calm, and ultimately better decision making, like I've mentioned. Now, to bring this into financial context, let's look at a few examples of how this could play out in real life. So instead of thinking the markets are crashing, they always do, I should sell everything and buy gold. Think the markets move in cycles. My portfolio is structured volatility, so I can weather any storm. Same market, same reality, completely different mindsets. Or this one, I can't afford to travel. What if I run out of money? Try reframing it to my retirement plan balances living for today while protecting tomorrow, so I can enjoy life confidently within the structure. Another one I hear, the economy and elections are too uncertain. It's safer for me to just wait and see. Instead, think uncertainty is the constant. My plan is designed to adapt, not to react. That's where safety comes from. When the headlines are saying everything is falling apart, which they always do, remind yourself the headlines amplify fear. My plan is grounded in long-term perspective, not just the daily noise. And then finally, one of my favorites, there's no point to planning. Life's too unpredictable. Reframe it to planning doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It prepares you to navigate it calmly and confidently. So as you look at the left hand of this chart, those don't think statements, that's where ego and fear live. The right hand is where awareness, purpose, and presence show up. And this is where that rubber band exercise comes back in. When you catch yourself in a negative or a fearful thought, financial or otherwise, give yourself a gentle snap, then pause and reframe. Replace it with a thought that's true, constructive, and rooted in something that you can control. And then over time, this is how calm will eventually win over chaos, not by changing the markets, but by mastering your mindset. So now we move to the third and the final pillar, process. In my opinion, this is actually the easiest one to implement because unlike mindset or emotion, A process is something that you can design, you can build, and you can follow. It's tangible. You can see it in action. And essentially, a process is what takes all the concepts that we talked about, purpose and presence, and turns them into habits that we can live with. And it's a bridge sort of between knowing and then doing. So let's start with the first point. The goal isn't to win, it's to improve. And what that means is process is all about progress. We've all heard this before. It's not perfection. Too often we chase outcomes, a specific number in our account, a certain title, a milestone. Generally, those things we don't have as much control over as we wish we did. And winning, it's really temporary, but growth, it's lasting. So if you focus on improving, whether it's saving a little more, or being consistent with reviews, or simply reacting with more calm during market volatility, you're building momentum that compounds over time. Let me give you an example. I've met people that say, I want to have $1 million and they want to have it by, I don't know, 40. Just going to use a random number here. Well, having $1 million by 40, there are things that can help with that. But if the markets don't react well, if we're in a scenario like 2008, that person's probably not going to reach their goals. What they should be more focused on is, well, I'd like to have $1 million by 40, and to do so, I should do X, Y, and Z, but I should also understand that the markets move how they move. And if I don't get there, it's very okay so long as I can stick to my process of maxing my 401k, saving into my non-retirement, and ensuring that I have an emergency fund. That's the process, and that's the most important thing. Second, set processes ultimately lead to more effort, growth, and then improvement. So when you have structure, you can make space for progress. In financial planning, that could be reviewing your plan annually. That could be automated savings. It could be scheduling tax reviews each fall. In life, it could mean having a morning routine, something you do before you check your phone and turn on the TV and do all the things and get to all the boxes that we need to check off. It could be creating a personal CRM system, something that holds you accountable to get your exercise in, send birthday texts, do all the things that you wish you did every day, but life gets in the way and you forget. Or it could also just be doing a weekly reflection. Process is what creates the rhythm, and the rhythm creates the growth. Third, progress is slow, but results can and will last forever. It is easy to get impatient, especially when we live in a world of instant results. But real transformation, financial or personal, it happens gradually. Just like compounding in a portfolio, small actions done consistently leads to exponential results over time. Next, culture's measure of success is wealth status and comparison, but your measure of success should be alignment. This goes back to what we talked about earlier. Are you living within your values? Are you achieving purpose-driven goals? That is what real success should look like. And here's the key point here. Excuse me. Process builds trust. When you trust the process, you don't need to chase results or react to every headline. You can move through uncertainty with confidence because you know your actions are aligned with who you are and where you're going and where you'd like to be. And the process, it's really your anchor. It's what keeps you steady when the markets or emotions start to move. And if you've read the book Atomic Habits, another good book, I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys, you would know that this book talks about small, repeatable systems, the kind of systems that make success automatic over time. And I'm a very big believer of this concept, as well as a believer that set processes are the key to success. You guys would think I'm crazy if you saw the process that I've built within my own life, personally and from a business standpoint, but it works. And I can tell you that over time, it really begins to help with everything in life. So to wrap everything up here, this three-pillar approach isn't just a one-time exercise. It's a continuous loop, and that loop keeps feeding itself. And it all starts with purpose. Purpose is what's going to drive the entire system. It's defining what truly matters to you. not just what you think you should be doing or supposed to want. Um, but with purpose, you're going to have clarity on the why behind your goals and habits. It's not enough to say, I want $1 million. Ask yourself why. What does that $1 million represent? Is it freedom? Is it security? Is it impact? From there, you then know what the purpose to your money is. And when you connect your goals to meaning, your purpose becomes like your compass. And a part of that purpose is shifting your focus away from comparison and towards contribution. You stop asking, how do I measure up? Who cares about that? There's always going to be someone that's better than you. Jeff, or well, better than you financially, maybe. But Jeff Bezos, for example, one of the richest people in the world, he has individuals that are wealthier than him. We all have someone that, is a step ahead, or it may seem like is a step ahead. So we shouldn't be asking, how do we measure up? We should really be asking, how can I make a difference? Whether that's a difference in your own life or a difference in other people's life. Next, we move to presence. And as I mentioned before, presence is the hardest to master, but it's also the most transformative. And presence is about being aware of your thoughts without judgment. You want to notice them as they come up. And it's about learning to respond instead of react. And here's what I mean by that. Reacting, it's instinctual. It's that immediate burst of emotion, let's say when the markets dip or when something doesn't go as planned. And it's actually an evolutionary trait that used to keep us safe. But in the 21st century, it's what gives us anxiety. Responding, on the other hand, it's intentional. It's pausing, it's taking that breath that we talked about, and then it's acting with clarity. And the difference between the two can completely change how you experience life and money. And then finally, full circle, we arrive at process. And this is where everything comes together, where your purpose and your presence ultimately become action. And the goal here isn't perfection, it's progress. So Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, all considered some of the best, if not the best in their sport, but none of them perfected their craft. They simply showed up every single day, were ready to improve, and they followed a process. And you build habits, you want to build habits that reflect your values. You review and adjust as needed, and you measure success not by short-term results or artificial watermarks, but by growth, development, and your effort. Because true discipline, it's going to compound. Every time you act with intention, every time you stick to a process, it reinforces who you are becoming. And then the loop continues. You refocus on your purpose, you practice presence, and you strengthen your process. Over time, these three elements reinforced each other, leading to peace, clarity, and confidence, both within finances, if you're using it from a financial standpoint, or in your life. So as we close, I want to leave everyone with this, and then we'll get to questions. Everything we've talked about today, it doesn't just apply to money, it applies to life. And for clients on this line, if anything resonated with you, or if it sparked something that you wanted to revisit with your financial plan, please reach out to us. Our door is always open. We're proactive in our reviews, but we love when clients take the initiative to connect after a session like this. So when we'd be meeting when it's most important to you. And for those that aren't clients, if you'd like to start working on your financial planning in the new year, or simply want to see what our process looks like, we do offer a complimentary financial plan through Christie's boot camp and coffee series. It's an opportunity to see exactly how we can help individuals and families align their money with their goals and values. I'll say there's no obligation to work with us long term. This is simply our way of helping you make smarter decisions and gain some clarity about where you're headed. All that we ask is you come to the process with openness and respect for our time and effort, because it does take a lot of time to create a thoughtful plan. It's a multi-meeting process where we'll dive into goals and objectives, build financial modeling centered around those objectives, and then analyze your financial situation, ultimately coming to you with recommendations. So if that's something you're interested in, please reach out. You can get my contact information here from Christy. But with that, I know we're coming up on time, and I'm sure there's some questions. So Christy, I'll pass it back to you. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. And no questions in the chat yet, but please put your questions in. There's a couple things that I talk to so many people. Um, and the biggest thing is what's going to happen in 2026. And we know that people can't separate their job search worries or focus or activities from their finances. And that's just a given, right? Everyone who is concerned, it has a tendency to derail you. And I like what you said about, you can't control uh, some things, but you can control, like focus on what you can control. The market is one thing, right? Whether or not uh you get that interview or you get that job offer, you can't control that. But if you look at like what's coming up in 2026, I mean, the biggest question is 2026 going to be better than 2025? And 2025 wasn't great in most people's eyes, especially from a job search perspective. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story related to that, and then I'll give you some thoughts. I have a friend who's in job search right now, and he was talking to me the other day about he was really frustrated because he had gone down the path with this company. He had multiple interviews, thought he had the job, and ultimately he didn't. They just sort of ghosted him until he reached out and they said, "Oh, sorry, we went a different direction." And it really frustrated him. And you could see it was affecting him emotionally. His personal life was affected. He wasn't the same person as he was maybe a couple months ago. And in that scenario, I talked to him a little bit about the reframing and being a little more present in what happened. And yes, it's frustrating when you think you're about to get something and you don't. It's like, the child when you're about to hand them a lollipop and then you pull it away and they start crying. But in his situation, there are so many variables that are completely out of his control. They may have taken the job off the market for internal economic reasons. Maybe the company just couldn't afford it. Maybe there was some nepotism going on in the company and they just decided to give it to a son or a nephew or someone like that and had nothing to do with his performance and his ability. And what ultimately we talked about was, hey, you can't let this affect your continued search. You need to stay positive. You need to keep doing all the things that you've been doing. Stick to your process. And at the end of the day, the process is what's going to get you the job. If you're constantly applying, if you're constantly reaching out to people that might be interviewing you on LinkedIn, if you're constantly going out to lunches with individuals, set a process up, a monthly process, monthly, weekly, daily, whatever it might be, so you can keep on track with your job search. Now, getting the job, that's completely out of your control. You aren't the one making that decision. That's an external force. That's someone else making that decision for you. But just like if you are always investing and always following the right process with money, long term, you will be wealthy, financially speaking. It's just how it works. And if you follow all the right steps and do all the right things, and that's why it's great, Christy, that you have this group so you can talk and share and figure out what steps you might need to take to get to where you want to be. And if you follow all those steps and follow a strict process, you will get a new job and you will have a job that you're happy with, comfortable with, and your life will be more full because of that. So the best thing that I can say to those that are in transition is stick to a strict process. Do not just wing it. Do not just throw a dart blindly at a board. Have a process that works. Stick to it like clockwork, and also give yourself some time for fun, enjoyment, and rest because you can't control everything. So you shouldn't be harping over the things that that are simply out of your control.
Thank you. Bill put in, being in job search sometimes takes you from, or most of the time, it takes you from the accumulation phase to the, what did you say, Bill? Uh,
I
You,
see as I think I can respond to this.
yeah,
So Bill mentioned job search causes you to go into the distribution phase. That's when you're spending your
distribution,
assets
right.
instead of the accumulation phase. If it takes longer to get a new job, it is harder to recover. That makes planning more difficult. That's certainly right. Um, and one of the best things that I recommend is when you're in times of transition, that is when you should be reviewing your financial planning and making adjustments. And if the adjustments may be spending less or cutting back in certain places because you need to protect yourself long term, then sometimes those are the hard decisions that you need to make. But when you're in a time of transition, you shouldn't just be going through it blindly. You should be reviewing, you should be talking with the professionals that you work with, and you should be strategizing. And everyone's plan is going to be different. I've met people that are in transition that immediately cut back all their expenses, but they don't need to. They're perfectly fine and they can live comfortably for a year or two while they're looking for a new job. And I've also met people that truly do need to cut back and create some more unique strategies specific to their situation so they don't put themselves in harm's way for the remainder of their retirement.
He also mentioned, talk about why taxes are in your control. While we can have a tax strategy, we can't predict what we will actually owe in taxes.
I would actually challenge you to think about that a little differently. So, taxes are out of our control in the sense that we, if we earn income, we're going to pay earned income tax. But we do know the exact tax rates. We can plan for the tax we'd ultimately pay. And there are a lot of strategies that you can implement, whether you're a business owner, executive, or just a normal person that pays tax that ultimately can lower taxes. One of the best things to do is at the beginning of the year think through all those items. Look at what your future taxes may be. Look at what your projected taxes would be for the next, let's say, calendar year, and decide what strategies make the most sense to implement today. So you're best planning for the future, whether that's tax deductible accounts, creative ways to lower taxes. If you have a business, making sure you're incorporated, writing off things like your car miles, going out to coffee with friends because you're talking business. All those little things you can plan for. But yes, Bill, you're correct in that you can't plan, or I guess you can't control taxes. The government, the IRS sets that for us.
yeah, no, it's especially true when you don't know what your income stream is when you're trying to figure that out, whether it's when you're trying to decide how much to do estimated taxes if you have to do that, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah. And you can always adjust those estimates. So if you want to err on the conservative side, just do the minimum estimate so you don't get hit with a penalty. And if income starts to go up, well, then adjust those estimates. And if needed, sit down with your CPA because if there have been adjustments to your financial life, positive adjustments, there might be some positive strategies that you can implement.
Thank you.
So I do think that having a review of your finances, it's eased people's minds. And because I think we horribilize things so much. And just having, an objective person review, some of the things that we can do. It's just so important. And thank you. So Luke, thank you so much. We have some comments in the chat. People really appreciate it. It does have broad applicability, and we're always in a state of wanting to improve our mindset, and I believe it's so important. So thank you, Luke, so much. And you're just such a great supporter of the community and of us. Thank you from the
You're
bottom
very
of my heart.
welcome.
So we have our first coffee of the year is going to be January 9th, and that's an author who just wrote a book and it just got published called Pushback or Possibility, Turning Resistance into Results. And Barbara Naish, and she was introduced to us by one of our boot campers. And I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. And, it's like pushback or, turning resistance into opportunities. Hey, we're facing resistance all the time in some form or fashion. But and then following week we'll have Katerina talk about salary negotiations, and she's always improving her conversation, her knowledge about salary negotiation. And we have seen salaries be negotiated differently just because of different things that are happening in the market. And so Katerina will be with us. So those are our upcoming two. We're dark on the second, but the next two are going to be great discussions. So I hope you join us and pass the word. Everyone is this call is open to everyone. And so don't, hesitate to pass it along and share it with your friends and relatives, et cetera. Because we want more people to take advantage of the great content and learnings that our speakers provide. And thank you so much for being in community with us. We enjoy having you. We enjoy seeing you, and you're an important part to us. And thank you so much. Don't hesitate to reach out to me or Cindy if we can be of assistance. And would love to, if you're in the Orange County, LA, San Diego area, and you want to meet for coffee or something, we'd love to. And but thank you all. It's so great to have you be a part of our community, and we enjoy it. I can tell you that for sure. And thank you. Have a wonderful holiday season, Merry Christmas, etc. And have a wonderful Happy New Year. Thank you, everyone.
Same back to you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Christy.
Merry Christmas all.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Bye.